Hi guys! Hope you're doing okay and the January blues aren't getting you down too much. This week I have been quite busy actually, although mostly with my own stuff, which is nice. As I said last week, I've just started doing a new sort of schedule for myself, a new timetable for myself in terms of what I write when and stuff. So this month I've been focusing mostly on my murder mystery series. I'm currently on the one that is loosely titled Secrets and Lies. That's going quite well. I've done enough of it now that I can stop looking at asphyxiation and start looking at arson, which is good, I suppose, in its own strange way. I'm pretty much convinced that I'm definitely on some government watch list now or another. It's when you look at your search history and go, I'm going to be the first person they come to if something happens. So most of the time I'm working on that, interspersed with my editing work for Coleman Editing. But I haven't had any this week, so I've been able to get on with quite a lot of my own projects. Thursdays, at the moment, I'm keeping for other projects. This week, it's including the video because I didn't do it yesterday because I didn't feel very well. But it's also things like catching up with the prompts for the Superstars for the next anthology, doing a bit of admin for that. It's when I'm intending to work on some more murder mystery plays in the future, and things like if another author has asked me to help out with a project, that's usually when I'll do that. Like one of my fellow authors on the Superstars project, I'm currently helping Ray Bailey put together their first poetry anthology, so that's quite exciting. I'll talk more about that when it comes to more closer to the release and stuff. So this week I actually managed to write one of the prompts for the next anthology. It's actually the first prompt of last year's crop, which means that it's been on my to-do list since December 2017. So, long time coming, that one. Possibly because it became part of something that I want to turn into a longer term project. So it's called The Whisper Market. In the first anthology, title not included, I wrote a piece in answer to the prompt, "You are what you eat," and I somehow managed to avoid cannibalism. I was quite surprised that basically no one went for cannibalism in that particular prompt, but anyway. And it became a story about a girl called Maisie going to collect some probably body parts. I'm not sure if I actually alluded to it. From this mysterious shopkeeper that she and her brother have always been afraid of, who may or may not be a zombie. And that story was quite a short bit. It was sort of the first time she wasn't afraid, and it was the first time he saw that she wasn't afraid, which was interesting. So that was sort of the beginning of their relationship, and I thought that would be the end of their relationship. But I was thinking about what I would write for Whisper Market last year, and I remember I was sitting in an author panel at SFW in March and thinking, I really like this guy's detective series, and it's got such a snappy tagline for it. You know, it's got the two names of the detectives, and it's kind of steampunk and it's kind of high fantasy, and I kind of like that kind of thing. I wonder if I could do something like that. And then immediately Maisie and Mr. January popped into my head as January and May, and I thought, oh no, I've got a series in my head. I need to write this bit of information down and this bit of information down and then not do anything to it so that I can actually get other projects done. So they're slowly coming towards forming a longer term project, and I decided to use the Whisper Market to develop them a little bit more, to see if I wanted to do stuff with them. And the more I wrote of it, the more I realised I am drafting probably quite a lengthy series with them. Those of you who are on my Patreon will know that I do a monthly live chat Q&A. One of the questions that came up from one of my patrons, Jessica Coleman, who is another Patreon user, and you should totally check out her page. It's the Write Together Alliance. It's really cool. It's like a community for people to get together and write stuff together and support each other and stuff. It's awesome. Anyway, so check her out. Link will be below. But as part of the discussion, she asked where characters come from for me. And this got me thinking how characters come to me. And I don't know if this is going to be helpful for anyone. It kind of helped me in my thinking about it, so I'm going to waffle about it here for a little bit for you. For me, characters sort of appear in four main ways. There are some exceptions, but it's mostly four ways. They either appear as a name, as a shape, as a picture, or like a snapshot of a person, or incidentally as part of dialogue or action in something I'm already writing. So I thought I'd run through an example of each of those ways a character has come to me, using examples from things I've already written. I should say at this point there will be some minor characterisation spoilers for both The House of Vines and You Are What You Eat and Whisper Market, because they're in my head at the moment, so I thought I'd use them. So if you don't want to be spoiled for those, maybe stop watching now. They're not huge, they're not like this is how it ends. But yeah, they are spoilers, so yeah, you have been warned. So first I'm going to deal with name. For me, naming a character gives them a lot of form. Case in point is Mr. January. I sat down one lunchtime and in between projects and stuff, and I sketched out just a few details that would carry me over for the short story. So I knew that I needed a shopkeeper, and I knew that he needed to be unusual in some way, and into my head popped the name Mr. January, and with that name came, well, he's extremely old. Extremely, extremely old. He may not be able to die. He's very creepy looking, particularly to small children, as the protagonist was in this case. He's not evil. He probably won't eat her. And the other thing I got as soon as I had his name was I got the suit he wears. One of those crisp sort of 19th century Dickensian things with the triangular collar and a waistcoat and a jacket and a pocket watch. And I could tell that he was very neat, and I could tell that he was almost certainly up to something. And all of that came because I named him, and it sort of hung on that name. So he's developed a little bit further in the Whisper Market, and I'm quite enjoying the direction that he's going in. He likes to pretend that he's scarier than he is. So that's Mr. January. He came just from the name. I've got a whole slew of characters who came from just their name. I think that's mainly where my character shapes come from, is their name. So the second way I get characters is through a shape. So these characters show up sort of as a collection of personality and character traits, and I usually know what I want them to do in the narrative, but I don't have a name, and I don't necessarily have any physical features. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Case in point would be Otto Finch from House of Vines. He's the head technomancer at the Court of Miracles. And the first time you meet him is through the lens of a small child, again, this time Astrid Healy. And I knew he would be extremely clever, probably clumsy, good-hearted, sometimes a bit vague, and a complete nerd. He comes into a point where Astrid's quite scared of where she is. She doesn't know what's going on. They go and fetch this person, they bring him in, and then he's the least threatening person that she's ever met. So I sort of had this shape in my head of this personality. So I started writing the scene, and suddenly he had red hair, and he was tall and gangly, and he was wearing a Firefly t-shirt, and he had turquoise dust on his nose from an explosion of something in the labs. His glasses were taped together and falling apart. And he has a cat called Cat, because he may be a genius when it comes to technomancy, but he's rubbish at naming things. And there he was, in his completeness. And I had one of the other characters talking to him, and he just said his name, and I was like, oh right, that's his name then. So that's how I got Otto Finch. Like many of my incidental characters, they show up a lot. I think in some ways I love my main characters because I know where they're going, and it's about their journey more than anything else that I'm writing. But the incidental characters let me go off on these myriad little weird journeys that I'm not expecting, and I do enjoy that. That's how when I say someone arrived as a shape, that's what I mean. Now the third way I get characters come to me is sort of like a snapshot or an image of them, which is generally almost entirely their physical characteristics, what they're wearing at a certain moment. They may be doing something specific in a scene, and I just build on it from there. The example I want to give for this one is Rue, who is a character in the Whisper Market. So I was writing this fantastical market and thinking about all the different stalls, everything that would be there, the sounds, what's going on. who would be running past, who would be walking, who'd be looking at stuff, who'd be picking pockets, that kind of thing. And out of this crowd, I just saw in my mind's eye this little girl wearing red clothes, good clothes but covered in soot, and her face is all sooty as well. So it's not that she's down on her look, it's more that this is the mode of travel she has chosen to get to the market, and she's got a lead with a dragon on it. And that was it. That was all of Rue. And I called her Rue because she told Maisie that's what her name was when I was writing it, so it became her name. You may have noticed I have all sorts of images up on my walls. One of the subscribers has asked that I do a tour at some point, so I might well do, but the reason I have all of these images is for inspiration. Some of them are famous people, some of them are characters I love from TV, movies, books. Some of them are artwork, photographs from magazines, all sorts of things. So I suppose in some ways, when they come to me as snapshots, they're probably aspects of the things I have on the wall. So yeah, Rue is a good example of one of the characters that has come to me as an image. The final character type is the incidental character. And what I mean by this is I will be writing a scene, or I will be writing some dialogue with a random person for a bit of colour in the scene, a little bit extra detail, and they'll start looking more like they have more dimension, looking like they have more scope. House of Vines, Stacey and Kevin were supposed to be in one scene and then never be seen again, but I really liked them. How they responded to one another, how they responded to this situation, the other characters, and I thought, ooh, wouldn't it be interesting if they were there when everything happened? So they just sort of got picked up and swept along, and they're going to become a part of the next one. I've already written in what they're doing there, and I think they're going to be around for the rest of the series, in fact. So those were the 4 ways characters come to me. I hope that my ramblings have in some way helped you, although I'm not entirely sure how they would, or maybe they've inspired you, or maybe they've helped you think about the way you work, I don't know. I'll probably talk more about character building at different points, because things occur to you at different points while you're working, and I'm sure something will come up at some point. If you want me to talk about anything in particular, please do comment below and I will get back to you, and I will have a think about how to include the topic. So in the next week I will be working more on the poetry anthology with Ray Bailey. I will be doing more thriller writing. Hopefully I'll get to the end of the one I'm working on now, which is Secrets and Lies, and I'll get to start on Song of the Sharks, which is my next one. One of my favourite titles, actually, when I was coming up with them. It's a working title, so it may shift, but you know. So that should be interesting. This afternoon I will be putting pen to paper on another prompt. I'm going to go for The Clock Tower is Calling this time, and I might try and do quite a straightforward teen romance, which is something that I don't often do. I try to put a bit of romance in each of my set of prompts because I know it's something that comes up in my stories, but I never just do it when it's not part of some kind of weird fantasy epic. So I feel I need more practice at it, I think, perhaps. And they're also quite a lot of fun to do, so we'll see how that turns out. It may turn into some kind of science fiction story about robots. I don't know yet. If you are enjoying this video, please do check out my other videos. You can hit the big subscribe button down there. You can find the link to my Patreon page down there, as well as the link to Coleman Editing, and to my friend Jessica Coleman's Patreon page as well, the Write Together Alliance. I hope you're having a good January, and I hope it is as gloriously sunny for you today as it is for me. And I'll see you next week. Happy writing, guys!